A black light spread across the sky, drawing many surprised gazes toward the ancient dark rune floating in the air, radiating a powerful energy. The dark ancestral talisman? Among the crowd, there were some with sharp eyes, and they quickly detected the strange fluctuations coming from the rune. A wave of astonished whispers rose across the field. Yuan Cang frowned as he looked at the dark ancestral talisman floating from Qingtan's forehead. The energy felt like the dark ancestral talisman, but something seemed off. The dark ancestral talisman should be far stronger than this. Yuan Cang's eyes flickered, and after a moment, something seemed to click. His brows raised slightly as he muttered, "So, it's just a replica of the dark ancestral talisman." Yuan Cang's sharp insight had clearly caught on. With just a few subtle clues, he deduced that the dark ancestral talisman in Qingtan's possession wasn't the real one. The dark ancestral talisman is the treasured artifact of the Dark Hall. For such a perfect replica to exist, only one of the old monsters from the Dark Hall could have made it. Who is this girl that she could get her hands on such a thing? Yuan Cang's gaze flickered as he speculated on Qingtan's identity. Could she be from the Dark Hall? Yuan Cang frowned. If that were true, it would be troublesome. The Dark Hall's power was no weaker than the Yuan Sect. If he killed this girl here, the Dark Hall certainly wouldn't take it lying down. Plus, for her to obtain a replica of the dark ancestral talisman, she must have a special status within the Dark Hall. Boom, boom. As Yuan Cang's mind raced, the dark ancestral talisman that had floated out from Qingtan's forehead suddenly erupted with overwhelming black light. The black light condensed in the air, forming a massive shadowy figure whose features were unclear. But from the figure came an intense, fierce aura. The massive shadow took shape. Then, under countless stunned gazes, it reached out a giant black hand and grabbed hold of a black scythe. Standing tall in the sky, the shadow, wielding the scythe, looked like death incarnate. Waves of brutal energy surged through the heavens. Cry. A clear phoenix cry suddenly echoed through the sky. In the distance, Huanhuan's pretty face turned pale, but she bit her lip and strummed the strings of her zither. Her voice, filled with cold energy, rang out alongside the music. Heavenly Phoenix Zither, nirvana of celestial melody. As her clear voice fell, a radiant red light burst from the glowing sphere above her head. In the next instant, roaring crimson flames shot out from the sphere, transforming into a meteor of fire that streaked across the sky, carrying a destructive aura as it hurtled toward Yuan Cang. As the fireball flew, mysterious sounds spread from it, sending shockwaves that caused the primordial energy in the air to go berserk. Scythe of Darkness, soul-severing slash. As Huanhuan unleashed her powerful assault, Qingtan's eyes flashed with determination. Her hands formed seals, and a soft command escaped her lips. At her words, the massive shadow holding the scythe stepped forward and, with a distant motion, swung the scythe down toward Yuan Cang. Boom! As the scythe descended, the space in front seemed to twist eerily. A massive black light, hundreds of feet wide, pierced through the air with a chilling energy, slicing toward Yuan Cang with fury. Boom! Boom! The attacks from both women were launched almost simultaneously. Countless people stared at the sky, their eyes filled with shock. No one could have imagined that Huanhuan and Qingtan could unleash such terrifying attacks. These strikes were so formidable that even a warrior on the verge of entering the life mystique stage would be forced to avoid them. It's hard to believe. Those two girls are so young, yet their abilities are so impressive. Wu Kun gazed upward, sighing in awe. But their opponent this time is Yuan Cang. That guy defeated Qingzhu, who in the younger generation of the Eastern Mystery region could possibly take him down. At this, Wu Kun glanced at Su Ro, who seemed like she was about to say something. He shook his head, exasperated, and said, "Don't tell me you're going to say that Lin Dong could do it?" Su Ro's face flushed red, and she muttered something under her breath, but ultimately stayed silent. You should just hope he shows up. If not, this fight will be a huge blow to his reputation. Even if he has a good reason for not being here, the disciples of Dao Sect have placed their hopes on him. If he doesn't appear, a lot of people will be disappointed. Wu Kun thought for a moment, then stared at Su Ro and added, even a defeated fighter earns more respect than someone who never shows up. Hearing this, Su Ro clenched her fists, biting her lip. Big brother Lin Dong will definitely come, she said resolutely. Let's hope so. Wu Kun shrugged, his eyes returning to the sky. His pupils narrowed as he saw that the two powerful attacks had already sealed off Yuan Cang's escape routes and were about to land. Primordial Emperor Codex, Primordial Emperor Bell. Just as the devastating strikes were about to hit Yuan Cang, his cold, deep voice echoed through the air. Boom. The space within this world seemed to twist at that moment. A mountain beneath the storm was directly torn apart, while the ground around it cracked open with massive fissures. Many people hurriedly retreated, fearing they'd be caught in the destruction. The shockwaves from this event persisted for several minutes before finally dissipating. As the rampaging primordial energy storm faded, all eyes immediately shifted to the source of the disturbance in the sky. Violent light gradually dispersed at the storm's center, revealing a colossal ancient bell under countless gazes. Yuan Cang actually blocked it. What terrifying strength! The Yuan Sect disciples erupted into deafening cheers upon seeing the bell, while the Dao Sect disciples turned pale. They knew full well that such a devastating attack from Huanhuan and Qingtan couldn't be repeated again. Crack! As everyone's eyes were focused on the ancient bell, cracks began to appear on its surface. Then, with a swift shatter, Yuan Cang's figure reappeared in the sky. Everyone's gaze locked onto Yuan Cang, and many pupils shrank in shock. There was a half-foot-long bloodstain on his chest. Yuan Cang is injured too. A wave of astonishment rippled through the crowd as they noticed the wound. Though Yuan Cang had managed to fend off the girl's powerful attack, it still left him with injuries. In the distance, Huanhuan and Qingtan's hearts sank. They hadn't expected that even after unleashing their strongest attack, they hadn't achieved the result they wanted. Yuan Cang's power was truly terrifying. Humph, it's been years since I was hurt. Yuan Cang coldly gazed at the bloodstain on his chest before raising his head, a cruel gleam flashing in his eyes as he stared at Huanhuan and Qingtan. But your little performance ends here. As his words fell, a chilling, killing intent erupted from Yuan Cang's body. With a sudden step, his figure blurred into a streak of light, heading straight for Huanhuan. Seeing Yuan Cang move, Huanhuan's expression shifted. She plucked her zither, sending dozens of fierce crimson sound waves rushing toward him. Bang, bang, bang. However, facing Huanhuan's attack, Yuan Cang flicked his fingers effortlessly, shattering the sound waves without slowing his pace. It was clear he intended to kill. Stay away from her. Qingtan, seeing Yuan Cang attacking Huanhuan, was shocked and swiftly charged forward. With a flick of her hand, the black scythe flew back into her grasp, cutting through the air as it slashed toward Yuan Cang. Out of my way. Yuan Cang's face turned cold as he countered with a palm strike. The overwhelming primordial energy shot out like lightning, slamming into Qingtan. Boom. The impact sent Qingtan flying, blood appearing at the corner of her mouth. After sending Qingtan flying with a single blow, Yuan Cang appeared in front of Huanhuan, his palm brimming with murderous intent. Seeing this, Huanhuan instinctively plucked her heavenly phoenix zither, raising the instrument as a shield. Yuan Cang sneered at the sight and struck the zither with full force. Clang! A crisp metallic sound rang out as a violent shockwave swept through the area. Huanhuan's delicate face flushed red, and with a mouthful of blood, her body was flung backward, stumbling as she landed awkwardly on the ground. Senior sister! The Dao Sect disciples nearby cried out in panic upon seeing Huanhuan's condition. Whoosh! High in the sky, Yuan Cang, noticing Huanhuan had narrowly escaped death, flashed a murderous glint in his eyes and immediately descended again. Though he had some reservations about Qingtan, his intent to kill Huanhuan was unmistakable. Protect senior sister. The Dao Sect disciples closest to Huanhuan shouted in rage, rushing to form a protective barrier in front of her, glaring at the incoming threat. Fools! Yuan Cang's face twisted with disdain. With a sweep of his hand, the surge of primordial energy lashed out, sending the dozen disciples flying, blood spurting from their mouths as the sound of breaking bones echoed. Watching her fellow disciples being struck down, Huanhuan's eyes turned red. Huanhuan, fall back. In midair, Wang Yin, who had been fighting Lei Qian for some time, suddenly shouted, noticing Yuan Cang's next deadly strike aimed at Huanhuan. But by now, Huanhuan had exhausted her strength. She looked helplessly at Yuan Cang's approaching figure, unable to muster any defense. Swish! The murderous palm strike from Yuan Cang expanded in Huanhuan's eyes. Just as it was about to land, a blood-soaked figure, Wang Yin, suddenly appeared, slapping Huanhuan away to safety before hastily trying to retreat himself. If you want to save someone, you'll have to pay for it. Before he could fully withdraw, Yuan Cang's cold laughter rang out. With a swift motion, he grabbed Wang Yan's arm and, with a fierce twist, a sickening crack filled the air as Wang Yan's arm shattered. Boom! After breaking Wang Yan's arm, Yuan Cang delivered a powerful kick, sending him flying several dozen meters, leaving a long trail on the ground. Lei Qian, finish her off, Yuan Cang said indifferently after kicking Wang Yan aside. Understood. In the air, Lei Qian grinned wickedly, his body flashing as he appeared before the stunned girl who stared blankly at Wang Yan's shattered arm. Lei Qian sneered as he eyed the teary-eyed Huanhuan, who stared at Wang Yin with bloodshot eyes. His fingers curled together, and with a sudden flick, an icy blast of energy shot towards her pale throat like lightning. Let's see who can save you this time. Lei Qian licked his lips as he gazed at the girl's slender neck, a twisted pleasure flashing across his eyes. All around, the disciples of the Dao Sect turned pale, their eyes reddening with rage. Huanhuan. In the sky, EngSubs, who had been pushed to the brink by Ling Dong, saw the scene unfold. Her face changed dramatically, and she let out a sharp, heart-wrenching cry filled with despair. You should worry about yourself instead, Ling Dong smirked coldly as he darted forward with ghostly speed. His fan jabbed out like a venomous snake, piercing through EngSubs' defenses and landing on her shoulder. The force created a bloody hole, forcing her into a humiliating retreat. But EngSubs had no mind for her own injury. Desperation filled her eyes as she stared at Huanhuan, who looked like a wilting flower on the verge of collapse under Lei Qian's attack. Tears welled in her eyes. Lin Dong. Suddenly, EngSubs threw her head back and screamed to the heavens. Her voice was hoarse and heart-rending, like a lark bleeding out its last cry. The anguish in her voice infected the eyes of countless onlookers, turning them bloodshot as well. The Dao Sect disciples, forced into such a tragic situation. As her desperate cry echoed, EngSubs' tears finally spilled over. She collapsed weakly, knowing that if anything happened to Huanhuan, she wouldn't have the face to return to the Dao Sect. Boom! Just as despair dimmed the light in EngSubs' eyes, a sharp sonic boom suddenly tore through the heavens. At that very moment, EngSubs' gaze, along with countless others, shot up. A streak of azure light sliced through the sky at an indescribable speed, barreling toward them with violent momentum. The figure within it radiated an overwhelming aura of fury. Lin Dong. EngSubs' despair was instantly replaced with hope as she recognized that familiar figure within the azure light. Lei Qian, watch out. Yuan Cang's face shifted as he barked a warning, his voice tense. But before his words could fully leave his lips, that terrifyingly fast azure shadow had already descended like a meteor. In the blink of an eye, before Lei Qian could even react, a fist cloaked in azure light smashed into his chest with terrifying force, fueled by immense rage. Boom! The dull thud echoed in everyone's ears as they watched Lei Qian's body shoot backward, skidding hundreds of meters along the ground before crashing violently into a rocky cliff, embedding him within the stone. Cracks spiderwebbed out from the impact. It's brother Lin Dong. He's back. On the mountaintop, Su Ro's eyes lit up with surprise and joy as she gazed at the azure figure who had stormed into the battlefield. This guy. He really made it in time, Wu Kun muttered, his expression shifting as he stared at the figure who had just sent Lei Qian flying. His face grew tense, for he could feel the overwhelming bloodlust emanating from Lin Dong, far more intense than even the demons of the alien demon region. At that moment, Wu Kun knew that this killing god of the Dao Sect had been truly enraged. Swallowing nervously, Wu Kun couldn't help but feel a foreboding sense that despite the vast power gap between Lin Dong and Yuan Cang, something tragic might befall the Yuan Sect this time. The battlefield seemed to calm under the strange power of Lin Dong's arrival. All eyes, from both sides, locked onto him. Under the countless gazes, the azure light surrounding Lin Dong's body slowly receded, revealing a young man. It was indeed Lin Dong. But now, his face was suffused with a chilling fury. His gaze flicked to Yuan Cang, and even the latter felt a shiver of unease under Lin Dong's beast-like stare. Lin Dong glanced at Yuan Cang for a moment before turning around. His eyes softened as he looked at Huanhuan, her usual lively spirit gone, replaced by red eyes brimming with lifelessness. A surge of heartache and a violent killing intent roiled in his chest. His hand trembled slightly as he reached out to touch her cold face. A flash of guilt crossed his eyes as he rasped, "I'm sorry. I'm late." At Lin Dong's touch, Huanhuan's vacant eyes finally focused. She stared at the youth in front of her, his eyes filled with fury and exhaustion from his frantic journey. Her already red eyes overflowed with tears, which began to fall uncontrollably. She stepped forward, collapsing into his embrace. All the emotions she had bottled up were unleashed, and like a child, she wept with heart-wrenching abandon. Her sobs filled the air with sorrow. So many of our brothers were killed. Senior brother Wang Yan's arm was broken. Even sister was injured. Lin Dong held Huanhuan tightly, his hand trembling as he gently stroked her hair. This was the first time he had ever seen the normally vibrant, cheerful girl cry like this. Not even when she had stayed behind alone to block the demon forces had she shed a tear. Lin Dong embraced her, then slowly lifted his head. He looked at the wounded Dao Sect disciples surrounding him, each of them staring back at him with fiery devotion. Yet, despite his late arrival, none of them showed a trace of blame in their eyes. "Junior brother Lin Dong, we've been useless. We actually had to rely on our little sister." Pang Tong wiped the blood from his face, sitting on the ground as he gave Lin Dong a bitter smile. Pang Tong suddenly stood up and knelt on one knee before Lin Dong. His face was twisted with a mix of madness and ferocity, staring at Lin Dong like a wounded beast clinging to its last hope. His low growl echoed through the air. "Please, strengthen Dao Sect." Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, the surrounding Dao Sect disciples all knelt on one knee as well, their eyes filled with a terrifying ferocity. "Senior brother Lin Dong, strengthen Dao Sect." The unified and deep voices of the Dao Sect disciples echoed across the heavens, brimming with hatred, causing many onlookers to change expressions. Lin Dong slowly embraced the girl in his arms, then gently released her as her sobbing began to fade. He reached out tenderly, wiping the tears from her face. Then, he looked up at the Dao Sect disciples, and on his youthful face, a chilling, twisted smile began to spread. "I will use the lives of all of them to bury our fallen brothers and sisters." His voice wasn't loud, but it spread steadily across the battlefield. Suddenly, the entire world seemed to fall into an eerie silence. In the air, an overwhelming bloodlust, like a slumbering demon, began to awaken in this blood-soaked land. The atmosphere, heavy with the scent of blood, grew even quieter at this moment, and at the center of this silence stood a young figure, shrouded in a violent aura. Though this person's apparent strength didn't stand out among the many gathered geniuses, no one dared to underestimate him. His previous actions had proven how foolish it would be to do so. When his voice, low and filled with menace, echoed through the air, many people's breathing stopped for a moment. They could sense the bloodshed in the air growing even more intense. At this time, EngSubs quickly descended from the sky. Seeing that Huanhuan was unharmed, she breathed a sigh of relief. "Senior sister Xiao, leave the rest to me." Lin Dong gently let go of the girl in his arms and looked at EngSubs, speaking softly. EngSubs looked at the young man before her. His usual smile was gone, replaced by bloodshot eyes that made him look terrifying. But somehow, this terrifying expression brought her an unexpected sense of peace. In Lin Dong's eyes, she could also see a hint of exhaustion. He had clearly been rushing here without rest. "Thank you. Be careful," EngSubs said, pulling Huanhuan close and giving the younger girl a comforting hug. She then looked at Lin Dong and added, "I know how dangerous the situation is, but I also know you rarely act without confidence." Lin Dong Ji. Lin Dong nodded and turned around. A joyous voice followed, and Qingtan appeared before him, her beautiful face full of excitement. At this moment, Qingtan had already wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, clearly not wanting Lin Dong to see she was hurt. But her pale face still betrayed the truth. Lin Dong looked at Qingtan's pale face and gently patted her head. This time, he didn't scold her, but the ferocity in his eyes grew even more intense, becoming utterly terrifying. "Take Brother Chun Kue back a bit," Lin Dong said, glancing at the injured Chun Kue in the distance. "Okay." Qingtan obediently nodded. Knowing Lin Dong so well, she could sense the storm of violence simmering beneath his calm exterior. Far away, Yuan Cang's indifferent gaze locked onto Lin Dong, who was now walking forward with a murderous aura. A cold, killing intent flickered in his eyes as he spoke with a faint smirk. "I thought you'd hide until the sect tournament ended. Turns out you have some courage after all. This place isn't bad." However, Lin Dong ignored his taunting words. He merely glanced around at the vast, rocky land. "It'll make a fitting graveyard for you all." Lin Dong's next words caused Yuan Cang's eyes to narrow, the coldness in his gaze deepening. "You're nothing. This place is better suited to be the graveyard of your Dao Sect disciples." A spirit general of the Yuan Sect, who had been fighting with Qingyi earlier, sneered coldly at Lin Dong's words. Lin Dong glanced at him, then lifted his foot and stepped forward. A blur appeared where he had been standing. Swish! The Yuan Sect spirit general, though no weakling, turned pale upon seeing the afterimage. He stomped his foot and rapidly retreated. However, just as he moved back, the sound of the air tearing reached his ears. Lin Dong's figure appeared like a ghost before him, with no words wasted, delivering a straight punch. As Lin Dong threw his punch, the azure dragon scales on his arm began to recede in a strange manner. Within mere moments, they completely merged into his skin. With the dragon scales gone, his arm took on a faint bluish hue, with twisting blue veins beneath the skin forming the shape of an azure dragon. These veins pulsed with overwhelming power. Lin Dong's punch was lightning fast. The Yuan Sect spirit general could only catch a glimpse of azure light before a terrifying force struck his chest and unleashed a flood of violent energy. A deep, rumbling voice echoed through the sky, and everyone saw the ground beneath the Yuan Sect spirit general's feet suddenly crack open, the fissures spreading like a spider's web. At that moment, the expression on the Yuan Sect spirit general's face froze. Slowly lowering his gaze, he looked at Lin Dong, who stood before him with a cold, indifferent face. From the depths of his eyes, fear and shock rapidly surged forth. Lin Dong didn't spare the man another glance. He retracted his fist, stepped aside, and walked away. By the time he had taken his third step, the Yuan Sect spirit general's body began to crack. The next instant, with a loud bang, he exploded into a cloud of blood mist amidst a chorus of horrified gasps. A spirit general of the Yuan Sect, an expert who had reached the 9th Nirvana stage, was destroyed by a single punch from Lin Dong. For a brief moment, the atmosphere between heaven and earth fell silent. Then, the sound of people sucking in sharp breaths broke the stillness. Even some experts who were on the verge of entering the life mystique stage might find such a feat hard to achieve. As blood mist spread through the air, Lin Dong walked forward slowly. Everywhere he went, the disciples of the Yuan Sect scrambled back in fear, their once ferocious faces now filled with terror. Yuan Cang's face darkened as he watched the scene unfold. After a moment, a chilling voice finally escaped his lips. "To kill a disciple of my Yuan Sect? You've got some nerve. It seems you're determined to drag Dao Sect disciples to their doom this time." Don't worry. Your fate will be the same as his. Lin Dong raised his head and looked at Yuan Cang with a faint smile. You bastard. I'll tear you apart today. Just as Lin Dong finished speaking, a furious roar erupted from afar. The crowd turned to see Lei Qian, who had been sent crashing into the rocks by Lin Dong's punch, now shattering the boulders around him. He glared at Lin Dong with rage, his voice booming as he summoned his immense primordial energy. With a grasp of his hand, a massive blade crackling with lightning appeared. His body shot forward, the lightning-infused blade humming with violent and sharp power as it slashed down towards Lin Dong, an all-out attack that shook the air. Lin Dong raised his head, staring at the blade's electric gleam. The azure dragon scales that had covered his body began to retract, disappearing beneath his skin as though all his defenses had been stripped away. Yet, although the dragon scales retreated, Lin Dong's skin faintly took on a greenish hue. Beneath his skin, veins bulged and writhed like coiling dragons, releasing an overwhelming power as they stretched and flexed. Clearly, Lin Dong's mastery of the Azure Dragon transformation had reached a profound level. Though the visible scales were gone, the sheer power surging beneath the surface was even more terrifying. With his dragon scales withdrawn, Lin Dong clenched his fist and threw a punch. Roar! A burst of azure light erupted from Lin Dong's arm, and a deep, draconic roar seemed to resonate through the air. To the astonishment of the onlookers, an azure dragon coiled around Lin Dong's fist as it collided head-on with Lei Qian's lightning blade. Boom! At the moment of impact, thunder rang out, and a violent shockwave tore through the air, wreaking havoc on the ground below as cracks rapidly spread across the terrain. Get lost! Lin Dong's pupils shifted, taking on a faint azure glow. Within his eyes, patterns of light gathered, resembling a coiled dragon, and an ancient dragon's oppressive aura radiated from his body. At that moment, Lin Dong was like an ancient dragon, wielding earth-shattering power. With a low growl, azure light surged from his fist, unleashing a terrifying force that made Lei Qian's expression change drastically. His body trembled violently, and his lightning blade was shaken from his grasp as he was sent flying backward in a battered state. In this direct confrontation, Lei Qian had been utterly defeated. As Lin Dong watched Lei Qian's retreating form, a flicker of ruthlessness flashed in his now azure eyes. In an instant, his figure blurred into motion, appearing before Lei Qian in a flash of light. Lin Dong, don't you dare. In midair, Ling Zhun's face turned cold as he saw Lin Dong about to deliver a killing blow. With a sharp movement of his folding fan, a massive and piercing spear of primordial energy formed, shooting toward Lin Dong's head with lightning speed. Swoosh! The spear hurtled down, but just as it was about to strike, Lin Dong's left hand shot out, effortlessly catching it. His movement was unimpeded as he clenched his right fist and drove it straight into Lei Qian's chest. Thud! The impact echoed through the air, and Lei Qian's face twisted in pain. Unable to contain it, he spat out a mouthful of blood before his body was sent crashing backward once again, his aura weakening significantly from the severe injuries. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers, their astonished gazes fixed on the young figure standing before them. In just a few short exchanges, Lin Dong had killed a Yuan Sect spirit general with a single punch and severely injured little Lei Qian, even with little Ling Qing intervening. Such prowess, it was truly jaw-dropping. Many exchanged glances in the crowd. No wonder Lin Dong had spoken so boldly earlier. His strength had grown by leaps and bounds in this short time. It seems things are about to get interesting. Several people's eyes drifted toward Yuan Cang, whose expression had grown increasingly grim. A hand reached out from behind Lei Qian, pressing against his back, forcibly absorbing the immense power that had surged through him. Lei Qian turned to see Yuan Cang standing there. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, his face darkened as he muttered, "This kid is even stronger than the last time we fought." The 8th Nirvana stage, Yuan Cang said indifferently. He's mastered an extremely formidable body-refining martial art. His physical strength is incredible. Judging by his performance just now, he's become even more adept in it. I was just careless. Lei Qian gritted his teeth. You're no longer his match, Yuan Cang remarked calmly. Lei Qian's expression changed. Though his eyes were filled with reluctance, he didn't argue. The earlier blow had been delivered with his full strength, yet Lin Dong had injured him with just a punch. It was clear now that even if they fought head-on, Lin Dong wouldn't be at a disadvantage. That bastard! Lei Qian's gaze turned dark, and an uneasy feeling crept in. When they first encountered Lin Dong in the alien demon city, Lin Dong had relied on tricks to gain an advantage. But in just a couple of months, his strength had grown so rapidly that Lei Qian could no longer do anything to him. What do we do now? At this moment, Ling Zhen descended from the sky, his eyes cold as he glanced at Lin Dong before turning to Yuan Cang. I'll deal with him personally. Yuan Cang stepped forward, his eyes locking onto Lin Dong. A sinister smile spread across his face as he said, I'll make him understand. There's always a price to pay for trying to play the hero. Oh, you're going to make a move? Ling Zhen raised an eyebrow and looked at Lin Dong with a playful expression. They were well aware of Yuan Cang's strength. He had even defeated the mighty Chen Kuei. Could Lin Dong possibly be stronger than Chen Kuei? As Yuan Cang advanced, all eyes in the area converged on him. The crowd's attention heightened, knowing that Yuan Cang was finally going to take action. The Yuan Sect disciples, seeing this, felt their spirits lift. Their gazes toward Lin Dong grew more ferocious, for their faith in Yuan Cang was unshakable. Whoosh! Just as Yuan Cang moved, the distant sky echoed with the sound of rushing wind. Everyone looked up to see a graceful figure in a white dress, stepping lightly on a lotus, flying swiftly through the air. It was none other than Ling Qingzhu. Her reputation in the Eastern Mystery region was no less than Yuan Cang's, and her appearance immediately drew countless eyes. Even Yuan Cang paused. His attention wasn't just because of her stunning beauty, but because her strength was something even he couldn't dismiss. As someone who had achieved minor completion of the life mystique stage, she stood among the top of the younger generation in the Eastern Mystery region. Ling Qingzhu, however, was used to such attention. Her clear eyes swept over the blood-stained battlefield below before settling on the young man, radiating intense killing intent. A complex emotion flickered in her gaze. Things had indeed escalated to the worst-case scenario. At this point, it was clear that there was no chance for reconciliation. A battle was inevitable. Heh, Qingzhu, Yuan Cang said, a smile forming on his otherwise cold face. I heard from Brother Wu Kun of your sect that you had some business in the alien demon region. I was thinking, if it's troublesome, I could lend you a hand. Thank you for the offer, Brother Yuan Cang, but I've already taken care of it, Ling Qingzhu replied with a faint smile. Good to hear. Once I'm done here, I'll join you for a chat, Yuan Cang said. He noticed the distant tone in her voice, which hinted at detachment, and although he frowned slightly, he maintained his smile. Ling Qingzhu didn't respond further. Her eyes lingered for a moment on Lin Dong, who hadn't glanced her way. She hesitated slightly before whispering, her voice wrapped in primordial energy, sending the message straight to Lin Dong's ears. Be careful. Yuan Cang is no easy opponent. Hearing the voice in his ears, Lin Dong's expressionless face finally showed a trace of emotion. He glanced up at Ling Qingzhu, who was standing on the lotus, and gave a slight nod. Seeing this, Ling Qingzhu said no more. Her lotus turned into a streak of green light as she flew toward the Nine Heavens Taiching Palace's mountain peak. From the fierce aura emanating from Lin Dong, she knew that Dao Sect had undoubtedly suffered significant losses at the hands of Yuan Sect. And with Lin Dong's temperament, it was clear that he wouldn't let this matter go easily. A major confrontation was inevitable, but she couldn't interfere in this battle. On a personal level, she was inclined to side with Lin Dong. The complicated relationship between them troubled even her, but it was still better than the distant ties she had with Yuan Cang. However, the situation wasn't just about her personal feelings. She was a disciple of Nine Heavens Taiching Palace, and this battle was not just a private matter between Lin Dong and Yuan Cang. It involved two of the most powerful sects. If she stepped in, it would drag Nine Heavens Taiching Palace into the conflict, further complicating the situation. So, she had to stay out of it. Yuan Cang watched Ling Qingzhu descend onto the mountain peak, his eyes darkening. He hadn't heard what Ling Qingzhu had whispered to Lin Dong, but he had sensed the subtle energy wave. Though he didn't know what was said, the exchange between them suggested a relationship that was far from simple. After all, Yuan Cang had never seen Ling Qingzhu speak to any man like that before. Yuan Cang took a deep breath, suppressing the violent killing intent stirred by his jealousy. He turned his head and glared at Lin Dong with an eerie gaze. "You really keep giving me reasons to kill you." Lin Dong seemed to smirk and said, "Fortunately, that's what I've been thinking from the start." Yuan Cang's lips twisted into a mocking smile. His eyes turned icy, and an overwhelming surge of primordial energy exploded from his body, roaring across the sky like endless waves. His energy was immensely powerful, having reached the minor completion of life mystique stage, where life force was born and merged with his primordial energy, making it endlessly abundant. Those below this stage couldn't even compare. Yuan Cang's body slowly rose into the air, the vast sea of primordial energy behind him. He looked down on Lin Dong as if he were a god overlooking a mere mortal. His cold smile deepened. "What will you fight me with?" As his laughter faded, Yuan Cang's eyes grew cold. He clenched his hand into a fist and slammed it downward. A massive wave of primordial energy formed a gigantic glowing palm that came crashing down toward Lin Dong. Boom! As the palm descended, its overwhelming force roared into existence, turning into a colossal light palm that covered the sky, smashing down on Lin Dong. Lin Dong looked up at the incoming attack, clenched his hand, and summoned the crimson furnace cauldron, which grew larger as it caught the wind. It glowed with a blazing red light, directly confronting the enormous light palm head-on. Bang! A violent shockwave erupted in mid-air. The light palm shattered, and the crimson furnace cauldron flew back, hovering over Lin Dong's head. His gaze, cold and piercing, locked onto Yuan Cang. Powerful and fiery energy waves radiated continuously from the heaven-burning cauldron. "So, that cauldron ended up in your hands." Yuan Cang's eyes darkened as he stared at the crimson furnace cauldron beneath Lin Dong. Behind him, Lei Qian and Ling Zhan's expressions also shifted. They had never imagined that the treasure they had fought so hard to obtain would now be in Lin Dong's possession. "But do you think you can stand against me with just a pure primordial treasure? My life mystique stage primordial energy alone will be enough to drain you dry." Yuan Cang sneered, the strength of his minor completion of life mystique stage granting him far more powerful primordial energy than Lin Dong. Even with a treasure in hand, Lin Dong was still no match for him. "Is your energy stronger than mine?" "I'm not so sure about that." In the face of Yuan Cang's cold smirk, Lin Dong merely looked up, his expression suddenly turning frosty. His hands swiftly formed a complex seal, and then he slammed his palm onto the ground. Rumble. As Lin Dong's palm touched the earth, strange ripples spread out from the ground. To everyone's shock, the land began to wither at a visible speed. From the barren ground, waves of terrifying energy surged forth, converging from all directions and pouring into Lin Dong's body. "What is this?" Yuan Cang's pupils contracted sharply. The great wilderness scripture? The vast land trembled, with waves of energy rapidly spreading out from Lin Dong as the epicenter. The once lush mountains began to turn yellow and wither, an aura of desolation spreading across the land. As the land decayed, massive amounts of energy surged from beneath the earth, rushing like a flood toward Lin Dong. Is that the great wilderness scripture of Dao Sect? The sudden transformation of the land caused an uproar. Many could feel the change beneath their feet and the surging torrent of energy from below. "I never thought Lin Dong could successfully cultivate the great wilderness scripture." Wu Kun's eyes were filled with shock as he stared at Lin Dong's figure amidst the desolation. His voice trembled slightly. It wasn't just him. Even Ling Qingzhu's gaze focused momentarily. The name of the great wilderness scripture was renowned, not only within Dao Sect but even among the other great sections. The legendary genius Zhou Tong of Dao Sect had once mastered this martial art and dominated the younger generation of the Eastern Mystery region. When he stormed the Yuan Sect, he turned thousands of miles of land into a wasteland, using that immense power to slay 3 elders of the Yuan Sect. Each one of them had reached the death mystique stage. Although Lin Dong hadn't yet reached Zhou Tong's level, the Great Wilderness Scripture was still incredibly powerful. It was no wonder Lin Dong had the confidence to challenge Yuan Cang. He had a true trump card in his hand. Among the Yuan Sect disciples, many recognized the fearsome martial art that had once struck terror into their sect. Fear flickered in their eyes. I didn't expect him to master that technique. Ling Zhun's face darkened as he muttered under his breath. Since Zhou Tong's time, no one has managed to master the Great Wilderness Scripture. How could this guy pull it off? Lei Qian's eyes were filled with disbelief. There's no need to worry too much, Ling Zhun sneered. Even though Lin Dong has learned the Great Wilderness Scripture, he's far from reaching Zhou Tong's level. Besides, Big Brother still has the spirit seal within him. This guy can't be let off. A flicker of killing intent flashed in Lei Qian's eyes. The current Lin Dong had shown terrifying potential. If he were allowed to grow unchecked, even Yuan Cang might not be able to suppress him in a few years. And who could guarantee that this guy wouldn't become the next Zhou Tong? Indeed, we can't let him go, Ling Zhun murmured, narrowing his eyes slightly. Boom, boom. Under countless shocked gazes, the trembling of the earth continued for a moment before gradually subsiding. However, the land within a 100-mile radius had already become utterly desolate. A primal aura of desolation filled the air, affecting the very hearts and minds of those nearby, slowing the flow of primordial energy within their bodies. What a strange aura of desolation. Some individuals quickly noticed, their hearts tightening as they hurriedly circulated their primordial energy to block out the pervasive desolation around them. Yuan Cang stood in the air, his expression dark as he stared down at the young man on the ground. He could feel a vast and surging energy rising from beneath the earth, pouring into Lin Dong's body. This was the domineering power of the Great Wilderness Scripture, absorbing the life force from the land and briefly transforming it into one's own power. While many martial arts could harness the forces of heaven and earth, the Great Wilderness Scripture was clearly more tyrannical. In the past, Dao Sect's Zhou Tong had made a name for himself in the Eastern Mystery region by relying on this very scripture. I really underestimated you. Yuan Cang's hands slowly clenched as his cold voice echoed across the land. But even though the Great Wilderness Scripture can absorb the desolate energy to strengthen one's body, it places extreme demands on physical strength. Even Zhou Tong dared not use it recklessly back then. Are you not afraid of tearing yourself apart? Yuan Cang clearly had a deep understanding of the Great Wilderness Scripture. While the martial art was undeniably powerful, if the practitioner's body wasn't strong enough, forcibly absorbing such massive amounts of energy would only lead to self-destruction. Although Yuan Cang knew Lin Dong possessed formidable body-refining martial arts, he didn't believe Lin Dong could compare to Zhou Tong from back then. Hearing the cold sneer from above, Lin Dong slowly raised his head. A cold, mocking smile appeared on his young face. Is that so? A light chuckle escaped Lin Dong's lips as he suddenly formed a hand seal. In the next instant, his eyes shone with an intense azure light, transforming his pupils into a pair of azure dragon eyes. In those pupils, dragon-shaped light patterns coiled, and the dragon's might became even more overwhelming. Azure light flickered on Lin Dong's skin. Unlike the previous dazzling displays, this time, the activation of his Azure Dragon transformation art appeared plain and simple, yet it radiated a profound and vast energy, as if it had returned to its roots. Lin Dong's skin took on a faint azure hue, appearing somewhat dry, as if it were covered by a layer of ancient dragon hide. It looked fragile, but it possessed immense defensive power. Roar! Azure light surged, and faintly, dragon patterns formed on Lin Dong's skin. The low sound of a dragon's roar reverberated within him, causing his blood to boil. Absorb! Lin Dong pressed his palm to the ground, and with a soft murmur, the earth beneath him erupted with towering beams of light. These beams were filled with boundless, surging energy, which was rapidly absorbed into Lin Dong's body. What shocked everyone the most was that despite absorbing such vast amounts of energy, Lin Dong's body showed no signs of breaking apart. It was clear that his physical body had reached a level capable of withstanding this immense influx of energy. Boom, boom. With the continuous flood of energy, Lin Dong's aura surged, and the primordial energy flowing through his body reached an astonishing level. Damn it! Lei Qian's face darkened as he watched Lin Dong within the light. He could sense that Lin Dong's primordial energy had now surpassed his own. The life force from the land within dozens of miles has all been absorbed by him. This range must be his current limit. But even so, he's a tough opponent. His body can withstand this level of energy infusion. Ling Zhen's expression also turned grim. Even he felt a bit unsettled by Lin Dong's bottomless capacity. No matter how much energy he absorbed, it seemed impossible to find his limits. The towering beams of light finally began to fade, and within them, a slightly thin figure slowly emerged, all eyes locked onto him. His footsteps were light as he walked on the ground. Yet each step seemed to echo with the earth's pulse, causing the ground to tremble ever so slightly. The azure glow dissipated, and Lin Dong lifted his head. His azure-colored eyes, still shimmering with light, locked onto Yuan Cang, whose expression was now dark and ominous in the sky. A faint smile appeared on Lin Dong's face as he spoke softly, "Now, how much of your advantage remains?" Boom! As Lin Dong's words fell, an overwhelming aura erupted from his body. This aura surpassed even Lei Qian, who had half a foot into the life mystique stage, and was directly pressuring Yuan Cang. Phew! Feeling the two towering auras clashing, countless onlookers exhaled deeply, their hearts racing. They had thought the battle between Chen Gui and Yuan Cang was the peak of this sect competition, but now they realized